Hi Guy, tonight we delve into the treacherous world of the golden age of piracy, specifically focusing on the Caribbean and its impact on the American colonies. You'll be swept away by the sights and sounds of a pirate ship, the salty air, and the creak of the wood. But you probably won't survive this, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You awaken on the deck of the Sea Serpent, the stench of salt and something vaguely rotten filling your nostrils, the rhythmic creak of the ship, the cries of gulls overhead. It's all strangely hypnotic. You're a newly recruited jailer aboard a ship commanded by the infamous Blackheart Bartholomew, a name whispered with a mix of fear and awe throughout the Caribbean. Your job is to keep the captured prisoners under control and the ship's crew safe from mutiny. As you want. Or so you think. The rough sawn planks are hard against your back, and for a moment, you forget where you are, the memory of a sun-drenched shore and clean water, a phantom limb. Then the reality of the serpent crashes back in. The illusion of a grand adventure shatters within your first full day. The real job, you learn, is whatever needs doing. Jailer's got idle hands, the bosun roars, his voice like grinding stones. You're put to work hauling heavy tar-slicked ropes until your palms are raw and bleeding. The sun is a merciless tyrant, beating down on the deck. You see others suffering alongside you, their faces grim, their bodies lean and wiry from endless toil. You also see Anne O'Sullivan, Anya, as some call her, propped against the mast, her mop held loosely in one hand. She's an expert at looking busy while doing nothing, her gaze distant, lost somewhere over the endless blue horizon. She never meets your eye, a ghost in the bustling machine of the ship. The food is a new level of misery. Hardtack biscuits so dense they could stop a musket ball. Crawling with weevils you learn to either pick out or swallow for the extra protein. The water is brackish, and the daily grog ration is more water than rum, but it's enough to dull the ache in your muscles. Violence is the currency of this world. You see a man flogged for stealing an extra biscuit, his back laid open to the bone while the crew watches in stony silence. It's a warning as much as a punishment. Amidst the grime and brutality, you find your cousin, Lachlan Fraser. Locke, they call him. As a lieutenant, he strides the deck with a simmering impatience, his hand never far from the hilt of his cutlass. Flynn, coil that line now. We're not on a pleasure cruise. He barks at you, his face a mask of authority. But for a fleeting second, you see a flicker of something else in his eyes. Concern, maybe, or just the weary recognition of family in this godforsaken place. He pushes you harder than anyone else, his impatience a constant fire at your back, as if he's trying to burn the softness out of you before the sea does. Yet, when the work is done, and the sun bleeds into the horizon, something shifts. The pirates gather, sharing their meager grog. A fiddle appears, and a mournful chanty fills the air. It's a song of lost loves and homes that will never be seen again. In that moment, the brutes who would slit a man's throat for a coin become brothers, bound by the shared hell of their existence. You find yourself humming along, the melody a strange comfort. This is the camaraderie you'd heard about, not one of friendship, but of shared fate on a floating piece of wood at the edge of the world. Weeks blur into a routine of sweat, hunger, and song, until one morning the cry comes from the crow's nest. Sail ho! Off the starboard bow, Spanish colors. Quote, the ship explodes into a frenzy of purposeful action. The lazy rhythm is gone, replaced by the thrum of a predator scenting blood. Locke is a whirlwind of motion, his impatience now a razor-sharp tool. To the guns! Gunners, load with chain shot. Sharpshooters to the rigging. Flynn, you're with the boarding party. Try not to get yourself killed. He shoves a heavy cutlass into your hands. The cold weight of it is both terrifying and exhilarating. Your arrogance, your deep-seated belief that you are meant for more than turning keys, surges through you. You grin, a flash of teeth in a dirty face. The Spanish galleon, La Fortuna, is heavy and slow, a fat prize ripe for the taking. The Sea Serpent is a shark, fast and deadly. The first cannonade is deafening. The air fills with the smell of sulfur and the shriek of splintering wood. A cannonball from the galleon screams past your head, smashing into the mainmast and sending a shower of deadly splinters across the deck. You see a man next to you fall, a jagged piece of wood buried in his chest, his eyes wide with surprise. There is no time to think. Grappling hooks fly, biting deep into the galleon's railings. With a primal roar, the pirates swarm across. You are swept along with them, your heart pounding a frantic rhythm against your ribs. You leap onto the deck of La Fortuna, landing amidst a scene of chaos. Spanish sailors, resplendent in their uniforms, meet the pirate tide with swords and pistols. The clang of steel on steel is everywhere. You parry a wild swing from a terrified Spaniard, your movements clumsy but desperate. He stumbles, and you lunge, the point of your cutlass finding its mark. The man crumples with a soft sigh, and you stand over him, panting, the coppery scent of blood hot in your nostrils. The battle is a blur of shouting, screaming, and the wet thud of blades finding flesh. It ends as quickly as it began. The Spanish surrender, their captain dead, their will broken. Silence descends, broken only by the groans of the wounded and the gentle lapping of waves against the hulls. The deck is a butcher's shop, slick with blood and littered with the dead and dying. But the pirates, they are transformed. The adrenaline of battle drains away, leaving a strange, vibrating calm in its wake. They move among the carnage, their faces grim but satisfied. You watch them methodically herding the surviving Spaniards and breaking open chests in the captain's cabin, revealing cascades of gold doubloons, shimmering silks, and exotic spices. You lean against the railing, your borrowed cutlass feeling impossibly heavy. Your entire body trembles from the aftermath of the fight. Across the deck, you catch Locke's eye. His usual impatience is gone, replaced by a quiet intensity. He gives you a single, sharp nod, a gesture of respect, of survival. It's more praise than you've ever received from him. Nearby, you spot Anya. She isn't cheering or marveling at the gold. Instead, she quietly kneels by a fallen Spanish officer. Her movements deft and practiced as she slips a silver ring from his finger and secretes it in her pocket, her face as impassive as ever. Later, as the sun sets, the crew passes around captured Spanish wine. There are no shanties tonight. Just the low murmur of voices and the shared looks of men who have stared into the abyss and stepped back. A quiet toast to the dead and a richer one to the living. You take a long swallow of the wine, the rich liquid a stark contrast to the foul grog. You have survived. You have killed. You have seen the raw, bloody heart of this life, and a deeply buried part of you, the arrogant and curious girl who signed on as a jailer, feels a terrifying and undeniable sense of being exactly where you are supposed to be. The victory high lasts as long as the Spanish wine, which is to say, not nearly long enough. Once the last bottle is drained and tossed into the sea, a familiar, grim reality settles back over the sea serpent. The captured gold is locked away, the initial thrill replaced by the long, monotonous days of the voyage ahead. The ship sails on, a speck of wood and desperation on an indifferent ocean. The first sign is subtle, easily dismissed. A man named Finn, a bear of a man who'd cleaved through 2 Spaniards in the battle, complains of his teeth feeling loose in their sockets. Others speak of a deep ache in their joints, a weariness that sleep cannot touch. You see it in their eyes first, a dull, listless quality replacing the feral glint of the pirate. Then you see it on their skin. Faint bruises appear on their legs and arms, dark splotches that spread like ink on wet paper. Old scars, long since faded into silver lines, begin to darken and puff up, reopening as if the wounds were fresh. The ship's surgeon, a man more butcher than healer, names the affliction with a grim finality, scurvy. The word hangs in the hot, stagnant air of the forecastle like a death sentence. Your role changes again. No longer a jailer, not quite a deckhand, you become something else, a caretaker for the damned. The lower deck transforms into a makeshift infirmary, the air thick with the metallic smell of blood and the low, constant moaning of the sick. You move between the hammocks, spooning brackish water between blackened lips and dabbing at gums that have become spongy, purpled masses of rotting flesh. You see strong men, men who faced cannon fire without flinching, reduced to whimpering shells, their bodies betraying them from the inside out. Their teeth fall out into their calloused palms, and they stare at the small, bloody pieces of ivory with a look of hollow disbelief. Locke drives the healthy men harder, his impatience curdling into a raw, desperate fury. He seems to believe that if he can keep the ship running perfectly, he can outrun the disease itself. "More sail! Scrub these decks until they shine!" he roars, but his voice lacks its usual conviction. He sees you tending to the sick, your face pale and smudged with grime, and for a moment the mask of the lieutenant slips. His eyes meet yours, and in them you see not impatience, but stark, naked fear. He looks away quickly, as if ashamed of the weakness. Anya, however, seems untouched. She performs her meager duties with the same lazy detachment as always, her expression unreadable. While you give half of your own meager water ration to a dying man, you see her slipping away from the sick bay, her face a blank canvas. She never offers to help, never speaks a word of comfort. She simply exists, a ghost moving through the ever-thickening miasma of death, her survival instincts turned inward, hoarding whatever strength she has for herself alone. The other pirates begin to notice, their gazes following her with a mixture of resentment and suspicion. The first death is Finn. The giant of a man withers away, his massive frame shrinking until he is a skeleton draped in skin. You hold his hand as he takes his last, rattling breath, his eyes fixed on the ceiling planks above, as if seeing a sky he'll never reach again. They wrap him in his hammock, weigh it down with a cannonball, and slide his body over the side. There's a brief prayer from the captain, a splash, and then he is gone. The sea takes him without ceremony. After Finn, they begin to go quickly. The fiddler, whose mournful shanties had been the ship's only solace, dies in his sleep, his instrument lying beside him. Another one, then two more. Each splash over the side is a blow, chipping away at the fragile camaraderie forged in battle. The fear is a physical presence now, coiling in your gut. At night, you lie in your hammock, listening to the groans of the dying and the creak of the ship, and you question everything. You trace the grain of the wood above you, your mind a maelstrom of regret. Why did you come here? The arrogant belief that you were special, that you were destined for more, now seems like a child's foolish fantasy. You were motivated by a naive curiosity, a thirst for something other than a predictable life, and it has led you to this floating coffin. You look at your own hands, still calloused but healthy. You check your own gums in a shard of broken mirror, prodding them until they bleed, desperate and terrified to see the telltale signs. Why are you still alive while they are dying? The question haunts you. Is it luck? A stronger constitution? Or is it some cruel cosmic joke? A wave of grief, hot and sharp, washes over you. Grief for the men you'd come to know, brutes and killers who had nonetheless shared their grog and their songs with you. It is followed by a surge of cold, hard anger. Anger at the captain, at the sea, at Locke, but most of all, at yourself. You chose this. This slow, rotting death was a consequence of a choice you made, a flippant signature on a piece of paper. You are confronting your own mortality not in the glorious chaos of battle, but in the foul-smelling dark, surrounded by the quiet, inexorable decay of the men who were, for a brief time, your brothers. The captain, Blackheart Bartholomew himself, makes the decision. His face, usually a mask of cruel confidence, is etched with the same fear you see in the eyes of his crew. A lookout, one of the few men still healthy enough to climb the rigging, had spotted a smudge of green on the horizon. Land, hope. The word spreads like a fever, a healthier one this time. The sea serpent limps towards the island, its sails patched, its crew a ghost of the force that took La Fortuna. The anchor drops in a turquoise bay, the sound of the chain a rattling sigh of relief. The scent of damp earth and blooming flowers, so alien after months of salt and rot, is intoxicating. You are one of the few still on your feet, your body weary but blessedly free of the scurvy's touch. While Locke, his impatience now a desperate focused energy, organizes the landing parties, hauling the sick ashore, searching for fresh water and fruit, you feel an overwhelming primal need, the need to be clean. You stand at the water's edge, the grime of the ship a second skin, the memory of blood and decay clinging to you like a shroud. The water is crystalline, the white sand beneath it impossibly pristine. The arrogance that led you here, long dormant, stirs. You survived battle, you survived disease. The sea owes you this one moment of peace. Ignoring a half-hearted call from a crewmate, you wade in, shedding your filthy shirt and trousers, the cool water a benediction on your skin. You duck under, The silence of the underwater world a sudden, shocking peace. You swim out, away from the shore, reveling in the simple, powerful movement of your limbs, washing the ship from you, washing away the fear. Floating on your back, you watch the clouds drift. You see figures on the beach, small and distant. You spot Anya O'Sullivan, tasked with standing watch on the beached longboat, leaning against its hull, her gaze characteristically vacant, lost in the shimmering heat haze. The sun is warm, the water is perfect. For a fleeting minute, you feel free. The first touch is not a bite, but a hard, rasping bump against your calf. It's like being struck by a submerged log. You flinch, treading water, and look down. Nothing but clear blue. An instant later, something gray and immense glides beneath you, its sheer size sending a jolt of pure, instinctual terror through your heart. It's not a log. Your breath catches. You start swimming for shore, no longer a graceful escape but a frantic, panicked scramble. Your arms and legs churn the water, every splash an alarm bell. The impact, when it comes, is a vice of impossible pressure closing around your thigh. It doesn't even register as pain at first, just a stunning, crushing force that yanks you under. The world dissolves into a churning chaos of blue water and blinding white bubbles. You see a dark, unblinking eye, a cold, ancient thing devoid of malice or mercy, simply existing. Then the teeth tear. A searing, white-hot agony explodes in your legs so intense it blanks out all other thought. Your scream is a gurgle of salt water. You thrash, punching at the rough sandpaper skin, your fists connecting with unyielding muscle. The water around you blooms with a cloud of your own blood, a crimson flower in a turquoise sea. The pressure releases as suddenly as it came. You surface, gasping, choking, your vision swimming. On the beach, there are shouts now. You see Locke, his face a white mask of horror, sprinting into the surf without a moment's hesitation. You see Anya, finally looking your way, her hand half raised, her mouth open in a silent "oh" of surprise. Your leg is a ruin, a mangled mess that feels both numb and on fire. The shark circles, a sleek, dark fin cutting the surface. The last thing you see before the world goes black is Locke's desperate, furious face as he reaches you, his cutlass in hand, screaming your name. You wake in hell, or at least its closest earthly equivalent. You're lying on a sailcloth cot under a hastily constructed palm frond roof. This is the field hospital, a strip of beach dedicated to the broken. The air is thick with the groans of the dying, the smell of rum used as antiseptic, sweat, and blood. All around you are the casualties of this pirate's life. Men from the battle with La Fortuna lie with festering, bandaged stumps. Men ravaged by scurvy whimper, their gums bleeding, their bodies covered in dark sores. The surgeon, his arms stained to the elbows, moves between them like a grim reaper, offering either a swig of rum or the mercy of a quick blade. The chaos, the pain, the sheer volume of suffering is overwhelming. It presses in on you, a physical weight. Your leg is wrapped tightly in strips of sailcloth, soaked through with blood. A deep, throbbing ache radiates from it, a constant, sickly pulse that reminds you of the shark's teeth. Locke is there, kneeling beside you. His impatience is gone, replaced by a raw, ragged concern. He grips your hand, his knuckles white. "Kiki," he says, "your childhood name a strange sound in this brutal place. You're an idiot. A complete and utter fool." There are no tears in his eyes, but his voice is thick with an emotion he can't conceal. He pushes a tin cup of fresh, cool water to your lips. Over the next few days, you drift in a feverish haze. You see Anya from a distance watching you. Her face is impassive, but she avoids your gaze. You overhear two pirates talking. "Saw the whole thing," one says. Anya was on watch, saw the fin clear as day, just stood there like a post until Fraser started screaming. The other man spits. "Lazy coward. Ought to be keel-hauled." The words confirm what you already suspected. Anya hadn't just been lazy. Her inaction had nearly been your death sentence. As the fever breaks and the pain subsides into a constant, manageable ache, clarity returns. And with it, reflection. You lie on your cot, a prisoner of your own ravaged body, and watch the grim theater of the camp. You see a boy no older than 17 die from a gangrenous wound, his last words a plea for his mother. You see, the scurvy-ridden men, buoyed by the fresh fruit, slowly begin to look human again, the light returning to their eyes. You watch Locke, tirelessly working, his authority the only thing holding this fractured group together. You touch the thick bandages on your leg. The shark attack, more than the battle, more than the disease, has changed you. The battle was chaos, a thing of men. But the shark was the sea itself, indifferent and absolute. It stripped away your last shred of arrogance, the foolish belief that you were the main character in an adventure. You are just a fragile piece of flesh and bone in a world of overwhelming power. The terror of that moment, of that cold, black eye, is branded onto your soul. You look out at the sea serpent, anchored in the bay. It no longer looks like a vessel of freedom or rebellion. It looks like a cage, a floating coffin that promises either a quick, violent death or a slow, rotting one. You think of the gold in its hold, the fleeting thrill of victory, the songs sung in the dark. It all seems like a fool's bargain now. Lying here, surrounded by the cost of that bargain, you question everything. What future is there in this life? More battles? More disease? More close calls with the indifferent violence of nature? For the first time since you signed your name and boarded that ship, you don't think about survival. You think about escape. You don't know what you want, not yet. But you know, with a certainty that settles deep in your bones, that it isn't this. The days of healing are long and monotonous, a stark contrast to the sharp, violent moments that defined your life aboard the ship. Your leg, now a latticework of crude stitches and scar tissue, is a constant, dull anchor. You learn to hobble on a driftwood crutch, your world shrinking to the small, miserable patch of sand that constitutes the camp. The supply of fresh fruit from the island runs out. The initial euphoria of landfall sours into resentment. The men, their scurvy held at bay but not cured, grow restless. Their gazes turn more and more frequently to the sea serpent, where Captain Bartholomew and his loyal officers remain, guarding the locked chests of Spanish gold. The whispers begin in the cool of the evenings, when the rum is passed around and tongues are loosened. You sit quietly by the fire, pretending to be more absorbed in wrapping your leg than in listening. But you hear everything. You hear Gideon, a grim-faced lieutenant with a festering grudge from a past flogging, speaking in low tones. "We took that prize," he mutters to a group of hulking sailors. "We bled for it." And for what? So Blackheart can sit on it like a king on his throne? "We're starving on this rock, while our shares molder in his cabin." Quote. Heads nod in the firelight. Another man, his face gaunt, adds, "He let the scurvy take Finn." And the fiddler. He was too slow to seek land, too greedy to share the good wine. He cares for the gold, not the men. The sentiment spreads like a contagion, more infectious than the scurvy had been. Men who had fought back to back now eye each other with suspicion. The camp divides into invisible factions, those loyal to the captain, mostly the officers and older hands, and the growing number of the discontented, drawn to Gideon's promises of a new vote for captain and an immediate equal split of the plunder. You see Locke moving through the camp, his face a thundercloud. His impatience is a weapon now, sharp and dangerous. "Get back to your duties," he snarls at a group of Gideon's men who are gambling instead of reinforcing the shelter. This isn't a holiday. They fall silent, but their glares follow him. The tension is a physical thing, a tightening in your chest. You see him look over at you, his expression softening for a barest second into worry before hardening again into the mask of the lieutenant. He is trying to hold the world together with sheer force of will, and you can see the cracks beginning to show. One afternoon, while you're resting in the shade, you see Anya. She moves with her usual languid disinterest, but her eyes are sharp. She drifts near Gideon's group, listening. Later, you see her speaking quietly with the ship's cook, a man known to be fiercely loyal to Bartholomew. She is playing the middle, gathering information, weighing which side will offer her the most for the least amount of risk. Her survival instinct, the one that kept her standing frozen on the beach while a shark tore you apart, is her only true guide. The sight of her duplicity fills you with a cold, clear anger that cuts through the fog of your pain. The whispers finally find you directly. You're trying to clean the grime from your hands in a bucket of murky water when Gideon looms over you. His shadow falls across you, and you look up from your crutch. Two of his largest men stand behind him, their arms crossed. "Flynn," Gideon says, his voice a low rumble. He doesn't offer sympathy for your injury. He sees it only as a tool. You've seen what this life is under Bartholomew. He works you to the bone, lets disease and beasts pick you apart, and keeps the reward for himself. You lie here, crippled, while your cousin Locke licks his boots. You stay silent, your knuckles white on your crutch. "We're making a change," Gideon continues, leaning closer. The smell of cheap rum is hot on his breath. "A captain's vote. It's the code. We have the numbers. The men are with us. We take the ship, we divide the gold, and we sail for a port where a person can get a real drink and forget this hellhole." He glances at your leg. "There'll be a full share in it for you, more than you'd ever see under Blackheart." Quote, "The offer hangs in the humid air between you. It's a choice you never thought you'd have to make. To side with them would be to betray Locke, the only family you have here, the man who plunged into the bloody water to save you. His loyalty to the captain is absolute." But Gideon's words resonate with the bitter truth you learned lying on your cot. The captain's leadership did lead to this. The pirate life, which you once saw as an adventure, has shown itself to be a meat grinder. The mutineers are offering a way out, or at least a different path. "Your cousin is a good officer," Gideon says, his voice softening, becoming persuasive. "But he's loyal to a fault. He can't see the ship is sinking. We don't want to hurt him. If you were with us, if you could just talk to him, tell him to stand aside when the time comes, it would all go much smoother, no more blood spilled. He's asking you to use your bond with Locke as a weapon against him, to choose between the man who saved your life and the seductive promise of justice and wealth offered by the men who embody the very brutality you've come to despise." You look past Gideon, at the men sharpening their knives by the fire, at Anya watching from the shadows with calculating eyes, and then across the camp to where Locke is arguing with the surgeon, his posture rigid with authority and strain. You are caught in the middle, no longer just a victim of circumstance, but a potential kingmaker in a deadly game. Your decision will not just determine your future, but whether your cousin lives or dies. "Think on it, Flynn," Gideon says, straightening up. "But don't think too long." The tide's turning. He and his men walk away, leaving you alone with the weight of an impossible choice. You don't have to think for long. The sky makes the decision for you. It begins as a change in the light, a sickly yellow-green tint that bleeds into the brilliant blue of the afternoon. The wind, which had been a gentle, cooling breeze, turns fickle and sharp, whipping sand into your eyes and tearing at the palm frond shelters. The sea itself seems to hold its breath. The turquoise bay darkens to a bruised purple, and the rhythmic lapping of the waves is replaced by a heavy, agitated chop. The pirates fall silent, their squabbles forgotten as they stare out at the horizon, where a wall of dark, bruised clouds is advancing with unnatural speed. A shout comes from the deck of the Sea Serpent, a voice amplified by a speaking trumpet. It's Bartholomew. "All hands, aboard now. Leave the damned sick, but get the longboats and yourselves back here, or I'll leave you to rot." Quote, there is no concern in his voice, only command. The order sends a jolt of panic through the camp. It's a mad scramble. Men grab what little they have and rush for the two longboats beached on the sand. You watch Gideon's men and the captain's loyalists shove each other aside, their feud momentarily eclipsed by a greater fear. Locke appears at your side, grabbing your arm. "Come on, Kiki! Move!" He half drags, half carries you towards the nearest boat, your crutch sinking uselessly in the soft sand. You stumble into the boat, landing hard on a bench, your legs screaming in protest. Anya is already there, having slipped aboard in the first moments of chaos, her face pale and her eyes fixed on the churning water. The journey back to the Serpent is a nightmare. The longboat is tossed by the growing waves, shipping water with every jarring slam. By the time you are hauled unceremoniously back onto the deck of the ship, the first fat drops of rain are spattering the planks. The sky has become a churning cauldron of black and gray. The wind begins to howl, a rising, mournful shriek that seems to come from the throat of some vast, enraged beast. The storm descends not as a squall, but as a physical assault. The rain comes in horizontal sheets, so dense you can barely see the forecastle from the quarterdeck. The wind rips at the rigging with a sound like tearing fabric, and the ship, your entire world, begins to protest. It groans. the timbers screaming under the strain as the sea serpent is lifted on the back of a monstrous black wave and then dropped into a trough with a sickening lurch that sends your stomach into your throat. You cling to a railing, your knuckles white, the wood vibrating with the ship's agony. The deck is a scene of frantic, desperate action. Locke is everywhere, his voice hoarse from shouting orders, his body a tense line of energy as he directs men to lash down the cannons and secure the sails. Then comes a grating, terrible sound from below. A shout goes up. "The anchor's dragging! We're being pushed onto the reef!" Quote. Bartholomew stands on the quarterdeck, legs braced, his oilskin coat plastered to his body. His face is illuminated by a flash of lightning, and you see not fear, but a cold, calculating fury. "Gideon! Take 5 men and secure that chain!" he bellows. Then he turns to another officer. "Bar the hatch to the lower deck, now!" A murmur of disbelief runs through the nearby crew. "But Captain," the officer stammers, "some of the men. I'll have no one skulking below near the hold while the ship is in peril." Bartholomew roars, his voice cutting through the wind. "They stay on deck and do their duty, or they'll be fodder for the fishes. Now do it!" Quote. You watch in horror as 2 men slide a heavy wooden beam across the main hatchway, sealing it from the outside. You are all trapped on this storm-lashed deck. A few minutes later, a colossal wave crashes over the bow, a wall of churning white water that sweeps the deck. You see one of Gideon's men, a young man named Tom, lose his footing. He's washed across the deck like a rag doll, his head cracking against the mainmast with a sickening thud. He lies dazed, trying to get up as another wave builds. 2 of his mates scramble towards him, trying to drag him to the relative safety of the quarterdeck. "Leave him!" The captain's voice is like a whip crack. "Secure that forward line! It's about to snap!" Quote. The men hesitate, looking from their fallen comrade to the captain. Tom is groaning, clawing at the slick planks. Bartholomew doesn't even glance at him. His eyes are fixed on the straining rigging, his jaw clenched. His priority is the rope, the sail, the ship, the vessel that holds his gold. The man is expendable. In that moment, illuminated by another flash of lightning, you see him for what he is. Not a leader, not a captain of men, but a monster of greed, as cold and indifferent as the sea itself. The ship lurches violently to port. You are thrown against the railing, the impact sending a fresh wave of fire up your leg. You cry out, biting back a scream of pain. The world is a blur of spray and terror. You are no longer on a ship. You are in the belly of a beast being shaken to pieces. The sheer, overwhelming power of it all is paralyzing. This isn't a battle you can fight, a disease you can survive, or a predator you can escape. It is the absolute, unfeeling power of the world, and you are nothing. Less than nothing. Your arrogance, your curiosity, your entire life story is just a meaningless speck about to be washed away into the black, churning water. The terror is so profound it becomes a strange, cold calm. You are going to die here. The thought is not a question, but a simple, flat statement of fact. Another wave crashes over the side, drenching you, stealing your breath. When you can see again, Tom is gone. The men who tried to help him are clinging to the ropes, their faces masks of shock and fury. Locke is frozen for a half second, his eyes wide as he stares at the empty space where the man had been. You see the conflict in his face, the horror warring with his ingrained duty. Then he turns away, forcing himself to follow the captain's orders, his movements jerky and savage. He saves the line. He saves the ship. But something in him breaks. You can see it even through the screaming wind and driving rain. The storm rages for what feels like an eternity, and then, as dawn approaches, its fury begins to abate. The wind slackens its scream to a wounded moan, the rain lessens, and the monstrous waves subside into a heavy, rolling swell. The sea serpent has survived. But it is a broken thing, its mast splintered, its sails in tatters, its crew hollowed out shells of men. As a weak, gray light spreads over the scene of devastation, you push yourself up. Your body is a symphony of pain, but your mind is clear, colder, and harder than it has ever been. You look at the barred hatchway, the spot where Tom was washed away, and then up at the quarterdeck, where Bartholomew is already assessing the damage to his precious ship. You look at Locke, who stands staring at his hands as if he doesn't recognize them. You find your crutch wedged beneath a coil of rope and pull it free. Hobbling across the treacherous, debris-strewn deck, you ignore the groans of the injured and the muttered curses of the survivors. You see Gideon leaning against the splintered mast, his face dark with a grief that is hardening into vengeful resolve. His eyes meet yours across the deck. All the questions, all the choices, all the fear and regret have been burned away by the storm. There is only one path left. You walk towards him, your steps slow, deliberate, and certain. You stop a few feet away, saying nothing. You simply hold his gaze, letting him see the ice in your own. Then you give him a single, sharp nod. The tide has turned. The storm on the sea is over, but the storm on the ship is just beginning. Gideon's eyes, chips of flint in his haggard face, hold yours for a long moment. He sees the fire is gone, replaced by something colder and more solid. He gives a barely perceptible dip of his chin, an acceptance of the unspoken pact. The alliance is sealed not with words or handshakes, but in the shared, grim understanding of the dead gray dawn. But the mutiny will have to wait. A new, more urgent cry cuts through the exhausted stupor of the crew. "She's taking on water! Fast! Below the waterline!" The words are a lightning strike to the ship's exhausted heart. Panic, a beast thought slain by the storm, rears its head again. Men start scrambling, shouting, their eyes wild. The sea serpent, the predator that survived the Spanish and the hurricane, is dying from within, its ribs staved in by a reef in the dark. It is sinking. "To the pumps!" Bartholomew shrieks from the quarterdeck, his voice cracking. "Salvage the longboats, and get the gold! Get the gold on deck!" His eyes are fixed on the hatch leading to his cabin, a feverish, proprietary gleam in them. He doesn't look at the wounded. He doesn't look at the dead. He sees only his treasure, about to be claimed by the deep. The deck is a chaos of conflicting orders and raw fear. Some men, loyalists, rush to the pumps, their movements sluggish with exhaustion. Gideon's men hesitate, their eyes flicking between their leader and the sinking ship. The vessel is a tomb, and every man knows it. You are shoved aside by a sailor rushing past, and your crutch slips on a patch of slick, bloody rainwater. You fall hard, your injured leg sending a bolt of pure agony through you. You lie there for a second, gasping, the cold, dirty water soaking into your clothes. You look up at the chaos, at men fighting for their own survival, at a captain fighting for his greed. The cold resolve in your gut wavers, threatening to dissolve into the same despair that surrounds you. Then you hear it, not a shout, but a weak, whimpering cry. "Help me, please." You push yourself up, gritting your teeth against the pain. The sound came from near the shattered remains of the cook's galley. Pinned beneath a heavy, waterlogged beam that was once part of the wall is a boy. He can't be more than 16, one of the new recruits, his face a mess of tears and blood. His leg is trapped, bent at an unnatural angle. No one else has noticed him. No one else is looking. Locke is on the far side of the ship, trying to organize a detail to clear a fouled line, his face a mask of frantic duty. Gideon is arguing with his men, pointing towards the island, planning their escape. Bartholomew is screaming about chests of doubloons. The boy is invisible to them all. But not to you. Something shifts inside you. It is not arrogance, not curiosity. It is a simple, undeniable impulse. You hobble over, your crutch finding purchase on the treacherous deck. "I see you," you say, your voice rough. "Hold on." The boy's terrified eyes lock onto yours. The beam is too heavy for you alone. You look around, your eyes scanning the deck. You see Anya. She has found a relatively dry spot under the overhang of the quarterdeck and is watching the proceedings with her usual detached stillness, a small, hard biscuit clutched in her hand. "Anya!" you shout, your voice sharp with an authority you didn't know you possessed. "Help me!" She stares at you, unblinking. For a second you think she'll ignore you, that her core of self-preservation is too dense to penetrate. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, she tucks the biscuit into her pocket and walks over. She doesn't speak, just looks from you to the beam to the crying boy. She seems to weigh the effort against some internal calculus. Finally, she nods. Together you put your shoulders to the wood. You grunt with the effort, the strain making the world go black at the edges of your vision. Anya is surprisingly strong, her lean frame hiding a wiry power. With a final, coordinated shove, the beam shifts, sliding off the boy's leg with a wet squelch. He screams, then sobs with relief. You kneel, ignoring the fire in your own thigh. The boy's leg is a ruin of splintered bone and torn flesh. Without thinking, you grab the hem of your own ragged shirt and rip a long strip from it. The material is filthy, but it's all you have. You begin to wrap the wound, your movements clumsy but gentle, mimicking what you saw the surgeon do, what you did for the men with scurvy. You murmur soothing words, nonsense phrases about being all right, about getting off this wreck. You feel the boy's hand grab yours, his grip surprisingly tight. Anya stands over you, watching. She disappears for a moment and returns with a tin cup of rainwater, collected in a fold of sailcloth. She offers it wordlessly to the boy. It is the single most helpful thing you have ever seen her do. You work for what feels like hours, a lifetime compressed into the slow, agonizing death of a ship. You are no longer Flynn the jailer or Kiki the fool. You are simply a pair of hands. You help another man splint his broken arm, using a piece of a shattered crate. You press a cloth to a deep gash in a sailor's scalp, holding it there until the bleeding slows, his head resting in your lap. You give away the last strip of your shirt. You don't think about the mutiny, or the gold, or Locke, or even the shark. You focus only on the person in front of you, on their pain, on their fear. Each small act of mercy is an anchor in the swirling chaos. Finally, you sit back on your heels, leaning against the mainmast. The ship lists heavily to port. The groans of its death throws a constant, deep thrum beneath you. You are surrounded by the wreckage of the storm and the ruin of men, and in the middle of it all you feel a profound and unshakable calm. The thrill of battle had been a hot, fleeting thing, an adrenaline spike that left you empty. The survival of the scurvy had been grim luck. The terror of the shark had been a lesson in absolute powerlessness. But this is different. The feeling of the boy's hand clutching yours, the look of gratitude in the sailor's eyes, the simple act of offering comfort in the face of oblivion. It's solid. It's real. It resonates in a place deep inside you that arrogance could never touch. You realize, with a clarity that cuts through all the pain and fear, that you had it all backwards. You thought strength was in the cutlass, in the arrogant belief that you were special, destined to rise above the filth. You thought it was about imposing your will on the world. But that wasn't strength. It was a brittle shield. True strength was here, in the wreckage. It was in the quiet, thankless work of putting a broken man back together. It was in kneeling in the filth to help someone you barely knew. It was in compassion. It was in seeing another's humanity and choosing to honor it. Even when the world was ending around you, you look across the deck and see Locke watching you. The frantic energy is gone from him. He is just standing there, soaked and exhausted, his cutlass hanging uselessly at his side. He looks at you, at the wounded men you've gathered around you, and his face is a canvas of confusion, shame, and a dawning, terrible respect. You have not just survived, you have become someone he doesn't recognize, and someone he now understands he should have been all along. The shark tore your flesh, the storm broke the ship, but it was here, in the ruin, that your old self finally died and you chose what you would become. The fragile calm on the deck shatters. The ship groans, a deep, final sound like a dying whale, and lurches violently, its deck tilting to a perilous angle. Water pours over the port railing in a constant, greedy flood. The sea serpent is no longer sinking, it is foundering. "The longboats, now!" It's Gideon's voice, a raw bark of command that cuts through Bartholomew's shrieks about his gold. The mutineer has become the pragmatist. A mad scramble begins for the one remaining longboat that hasn't been smashed to splinters by the storm. Bartholomew, his face a mask of deranged fury, shoves past his own men. "The gold first!" he screams, trying to direct two loyalists to haul a heavy chest towards the boat. "A man is worth nothing. The gold is everything." Locke appears at your side, his face grim. He doesn't look at the captain. He looks at you, and at the whimpering boy whose leg you've bound. "We're not leaving them, Kiki," he says, his voice low and firm. He has made his choice. Gideon and his men, seeing Bartholomew's madness, also make theirs. They shove the captain's loyalists aside. One of the chests topples, spilling a river of Spanish doubloons that roll and glitter across the slick, angled deck before disappearing into the churning sea. Bartholomew lets out a strangled cry, like an animal watching its young being devoured. "Get in the boat!" Locke orders, his voice the old lieutenant's bark, but his focus is entirely new. He and one of Gideon's men carefully lift the injured boy. passing him down into the bobbing longboat where Anya has already secured a place. She helps guide the boy in, her movements efficient and devoid of emotion. A simple calculation of keeping the boat balanced. Locke turns to you. Your turn. He lifts you as if you weigh nothing, his strength a shocking contrast to his exhausted face. He lowers you into the boat, and you collapse onto a bench, your leg a universe of agony. You watch as a few more men, a mix of Gideon's faction and former loyalists, jump in, their old allegiances washed away by the immediate threat of the ocean. Gideon is the last to get in, his cutlass in hand. He looks back at the deck of the dying ship. Bartholomew is on his knees, frantically scooping his scattered gold, oblivious to the water swirling around his legs. The ship gives a final, shuddering groan and begins its steep, final slide into the sea. "Cut the line!" Gideon roars. Locke, already holding the knife, slashes the rope. Your small, overloaded boat is violently pulled away as the sea serpent is sucked under. You watch the mast with its tattered black flag tilt towards the sky and then disappear beneath the waves with a great sigh of bubbling water. Bartholomew is gone. The gold is gone. The ship, your cage, and your world for so many months is gone. You are adrift in a damaged boat, surrounded by a handful of survivors on an endless, indifferent sea. The escape is complete. The ordeal has just begun. The first day is a blur of shock and pain. The longboat, its side splintered from the storm, takes on water. A constant grim rhythm is established. Two men bail with their cupped hands, while the others huddle, their gazes lost on the horizon. The sun, once hidden, emerges with a vengeance, a merciless white eye in a cloudless sky. It beats down on your heads, baking the salt into your skin, cracking your lips. You have one small cask of fresh water, salvaged in the chaos. Locke takes charge of it immediately, his authority unquestioned. He doles out a single, agonizingly small mouthful to each person, starting with the injured boy, who is now delirious with fever. You sit beside the boy, dipping a strip of your shirt into the bilge water, salty but cooler than the air, and dabbing his forehead. It's a useless gesture, but it's an action. It's something other than staring at the empty expanse of water that stretches to infinity in every direction. The arrogance that led you to this life feels like a memory from someone else's story. Who was that foolish girl? She couldn't have survived this. She would have despaired. You, however, just continue to dab the boy's brow. Anya is a study in conservation. She barely moves, her body curled in the bow, to present the smallest possible surface to the sun. She watches everything with those still, calculating eyes. On the second day, as the sun reaches its zenith, she points a thin finger to the west. "Clouds," she says, her voice a dry rasp. It's the most she has spoken since the sinking. A few hours later, a brief, blessed squall passes over, and you all turn your faces to the sky, mouths open, catching the precious drops of fresh rain, using your hands and scraps of cloth to funnel a little more into the precious cask. It was Anya's quiet observation that saved you from the worst of the thirst. The third day, hunger arrives, a deep, gnawing emptiness that twists your insides. Men who had faced cannonballs now stare at their own hands with a frightening intensity. That night, under a dome of brilliant, mocking stars, Gideon speaks, his voice low. "The boy, he's not going to make it. We can't spare the water." The words hang in the silent air. It's the cold logic of survival, the same logic that made Bartholomew abandon Tom to the waves. You look at the boy's slack face, his chest barely rising and falling. Then you look at Gideon. "We are not them," you say, your voice quiet but hard as forged steel. "We are not him." Quote. Locke, sitting beside you, places a hand on the hilt of his cutlass. She's right. We all drink, or none of us drink. That's the end of it. Gideon looks from you to Locke, then around at the other grim faces. He sees the resolve. He sees that something fundamental has shifted. He slumps back against the gunwale and says no more. The terror returns on the fourth day. A familiar triangular fin cuts the surface of the water, circling the boat. It's smaller than the one that attacked you, but it is a shark nonetheless. A collective shudder runs through the survivors. You feel the phantom pain in your leg flare, a hot, tearing memory. You can't breathe. The world shrinks to that dark fin, that cold, implacable purpose. Locke moves to the side of the boat, his cutlass in his hand, and stands watch. He doesn't take his eyes off the fin. He stands there for hours, a silent, weary guardian, until the shark, sensing no easy meal, finally loses interest and disappears into the blue depths. He collapses back onto the bench, utterly spent, and your breath finally returns. Days and nights bleed into one another. You lose track of time. Your world is the creak of the boat, the sting of the sun, the gnawing of your gut, the rasp of breath from the man next to you. Hope is a dwindling currency. You are a handful of ghosts in a coffin, waiting for the sea to claim you. Then, as you drift in a listless haze, you hear Anya's voice again, sharp this time. There. You all struggle to look where she's pointing. At first, it's nothing. A smudge on the horizon. A trick of the light. A cloud. But it doesn't move. It doesn't dissipate. It stays. A low, dark line between the sea and the sky. Land. The word is a jolt of electricity. It animates your half-dead bodies. A desperate, primal energy surges through you. You find the oars. Your hands are raw, blistered, but you grip the wood. Locke, Gideon, you, even Anya, everyone who can, rows. You pull against the water, your muscles screaming, your body fueled by nothing but the image of that dark line. The injured boy stirs, his eyes fluttering open. Water? He whispers. You hold the cask to his lips, letting him drink the last of it. It takes the rest of the day, an eternity of agonizingly slow progress. The dark line grows, resolving itself into the green of trees, the white of a sandy beach. As the sun sets, casting the world in hues of orange and purple, the bottom of the longboat scrapes against sand. The sound is the sweetest music you have ever heard. You tumble out into the shallows, the cool water a shock to your system. You fall to your knees on the wet sand, tears you didn't know you had, left carving clean paths through the grime on your face. You've made it. You press your palms flat against the solid, unmoving earth, a prayer of thanks. You look at the others. Locke, helping the boy onto the beach. Gideon, staring back out at the ocean. Anya, already scanning the tree line for resources. You are wrecked. You are starved. You are scarred, inside and out. The arrogant girl who signed on as a jailer is dead, drowned with the sea serpent. The pirate's life, with its false promises of glory and gold, is over. You have escaped. But as you feel the deep, permanent ache in your leg, and see the haunted look in the eyes of your fellow survivors, you know that the sea will always be a part of you. You have survived, but you will never truly leave it behind. The sand is solid beneath you, a miracle of stillness after an eternity of motion. For the first day, you do little more than exist on that blessed strip of beach. Your body's too broken to do more than crawl to the shade of the palms and sleep. The sleep is dreamless and profound, a deep, dark well of exhaustion. When you wake, it is to the quiet, tireless industry of survival. Locke, his authority now gentle and born of necessity, has found a spring of fresh water bubbling from a rock formation. Gideon, his mutinous energy channeled into pragmatism, has organized the able-bodied men into gathering firewood. And Anya, ever the silent observer, returns from the tree line with her hands full of broad-leafed plants and knobby roots. She lays them on a flat rock, points to one, and makes a small, negative shake of her head. Then she points to the other, nods, and takes a small bite of a root, chewing with methodical patience. It's a lesson in botany, delivered without a single word. You watch her, and for the first time, you understand. Her laziness on the ship wasn't sloth. It was a radical conservation of energy. She never wasted a movement, a word, or a thought on anything that did not directly serve her own survival. Now that her survival is tied to the groups, her quiet, efficient focus has become an asset. Your new life takes on a rhythm. The days are measured by the sun's arc, and the tasks required to meet it. Gather food, maintain the fire, tend to the wounded. The injured boy, whose name you learn is Pip, clings to life. You become his shadow, cleaning his wound with boiled water, mashing the softest roots for him to eat, coaxing sips of water between his cracked lips. You move with a purpose that has nothing to do with orders or adventure. It is a simple, grounding weight. You are a healer, a caretaker. The thought doesn't feel grand or important. It just feels right, like finding the proper use for a tool that has been long misused. One evening, you sit by the fire, changing the dressing on your leg. The wound is a puckered, ugly map of your folly, a starburst of jagged scar tissue that will forever pull and ache. You trace its edges, not with horror, but with a detached curiosity. This is the price of your education. It's a nasty mark, Locke says quietly, sitting down beside you. He's not looking at the scar, but at your face. It is, you agree. I was a fool. We all were, he says, his gaze drifting to the fire. I thought being a lieutenant, being hard on everyone, on you, I thought that was strength, that it would keep us safe. I just drove men to hate me and watched the captain drive them to their deaths. He shakes his head, a small, bitter motion. You, kneeling on that sinking deck with Pip, that was strength, Kiki. I just didn't know what it looked like until I saw it. You look at your cousin, at the lines of exhaustion and grief etched around his eyes. The impatience is gone, burned out of him, leaving a quiet sorrow in its place. You are no longer lieutenant and jailer, officer and subordinate. You are just two people from the same home, a long way from it, who have seen the world tear itself apart and are trying to piece together the fragments. After 2 weeks, Pip can sit up. The longboat, painstakingly patched with tree sap and strips of salvaged sailcloth, is declared seaworthy, or at least as seaworthy as it's going to get. There is no talk of what comes next. No debate over heading to a pirate haven or a bustling colonial port. There is only one direction: home. The word itself is a prayer. The journey is a second crucible, quieter than the first, but no less arduous. You are adrift again, but this time by choice. You are no longer waiting to die. You are willing yourselves to live. You sail by the sun and the stars, Locke's naval training a faint but crucial memory. You ration the smoked fish and dried fruit, each portion a treasure. You reflect. In the long, silent hours under the vast empty sky, the ghosts of the sea serpent visit you. You see Finn, wasting away from scurvy. You see the fiddler's quiet end. You see Tom, swallowed by the storm. You see Blackheart Bartholomew kneeling in the water, a king drowning in his worthless kingdom. You don't push the memories away. You let them wash over you. You acknowledge the horror, the waste, the brutal pointlessness of it all. You had wanted an adventure, a story to tell. You had gotten one, but it was a tragedy, written in blood and rot. The arrogance that propelled you into that life feels like a thin, ridiculous costume you wore once, and have now thankfully discarded. You are not the main character, you are a survivor, a witness. And that, you realize, is more than enough. You forge your new identity in these small, quiet moments. You teach Pip how to tie a proper knot, your hands guiding his. You take your turn at the oars without complaint, the rhythmic pull and strain a meditation. You listen to Gideon's stories of his home, a fishing village he now speaks of with a desperate longing. You learn the names of the other 3 survivors, their hopes, and their histories. You are no longer pirates, a crew bound by a violent code. You are a small, fragile family, bound by the shared trauma of the sea. After what feels like a lifetime, you spot it. A sail. Not a tattered black flag, but the clean white canvas of a merchant vessel. Hope and fear war in your gut. You are a collection of gaunt, ragged castaways in a battered longboat. You could be a threat. You could be a prize. As the ship draws closer, you stand, your driftwood crutch under one arm. Your voice, when you call out, is steadier than you expect. You tell a simple, edited truth. You are survivors of a wreck, merchants out of Bridgetown, caught in the same hurricane that nearly claimed you all. There is no mention of the sea serpent, of La Fortuna, of pirates or gold. That story is over, sunk to the bottom of the sea. The merchant captain, a wary but decent man, takes you aboard. The feeling of a solid, stable deck under your feet is dizzying. The crew gives you water, hard biscuits, and salted meat. It is the most delicious meal you have ever eaten. You are shown to a small, empty storage cabin where you can rest. That night, you lie on a pile of canvas, listening to the familiar creak of a ship. But it is different now. It is the sound of passage, not imprisonment. Pip sleeps soundly nearby, his breathing even. Locke and Gideon are on deck, talking quietly with the merchant's first mate, planning a course to the nearest friendly port. Through the open cabin door, you can see the stars. They are the same stars that watched you suffer, but they look different now. They look like a map leading forward. You are scarred. You are tired. The road ahead is long, and home is still a distant shore. But for the first time in what feels like a lifetime, you are not running from anything. You are sailing towards something. You close your eyes, and for the first time, you don't see the shark's eye or the storm. You see a green field, you smell clean earth, and you feel the solid, steady ground of a life you have chosen, a life you have earned. You are going home. The voyage aboard the merchantman, the Providence, is a slow, waking dream. The routine of the ship is a revelation. There are no bellowed orders backed by the threat of a lash, only quiet commands and the efficient, coordinated work of a professional crew. The sailors are not brutes bound by desperation. They are men with jobs, who speak of their families in port and complain about the quality of the tobacco. They look at you and your companions not with suspicion, but with a kind of weary pity. You are a story of the sea's cruelty, a common enough tale for them. You find your place in this new rhythm. You spend your time with the ship's cook, a portly man named Silas, who lets you help peel potatoes and chop salted beef in his clean, well-ordered galley. The simple, mindless work is a balm to your soul. He doesn't ask about your past, but he sees the way you care for Pip, whose fever has broken, leaving him weak but lucid. One day, Silas presses a small, sticky fig into your hand. "For the boy," he says, "and for the nurse." The title lands on you not as a new identity, but as a simple statement of fact. Locke finds a purpose as well. He speaks with the captain, a calm, gray-haired man named Hayes, sharing his knowledge of the currents in these waters. He points out a safer passage on a chart, earning a nod of respect. You see him coiling a line with a precision you never saw on the sea serpent, and you realize he wasn't just a pirate lieutenant. He was a sailor, and a good one. The sea is in his blood. But here, it is a profession, not a death sentence. Anya remains a quiet enigma. She finds a needle and thread and methodically mends the survivor's ragged clothes, her stitches small and perfect. She speaks to no one, but her work speaks for her. Gideon sits for hours, staring out at the wake of the ship, a man lost in thought, the ghosts of his mutinous ambition finally at rest. After 10 days, Captain Hayes informs you that you are approaching Charleston. The name means nothing to you, but the word port sends a ripple of nervous energy through your small group. It is the end of one journey and the beginning of another, far more uncertain one. As the ship navigates the channel into the harbor, the sight of the city is overwhelming. It is a dense forest of brick buildings and church steeples, alive with the sounds of commerce, carriage wheels on cobblestones, and the distant peal of a bell. It is civilization. It is everything the sea serpent was not. Captain Hayes leads your ragged group onto the dock. You stand there blinking in the bright sun, a small island of destitution amidst the bustling crowds. People give you a wide berth, their gazes a mixture of curiosity and distaste. You have nothing. No money, no papers, no future beyond this splintered dock. The hope that carried you across the ocean begins to fray. Hayes clears his throat. "I've sent word to a man, a physician. He sometimes helps with unfortunates from the sea. He looks uncomfortable, a man unused to charity." A few minutes later, a well-dressed gentleman with kind, tired eyes and silver-streaked hair approaches. He carries a black leather bag. "Captain Hayes," the man says, his voice calm and gentle. "These are the ones?" Quote, "Dr. Vance, yes," Hayes replies. This is them. Wrecked on an island south of here. They've had a hard time of it." Quote. Dr. Vance's eyes move over your group, his gaze sharp but full of compassion. He lingers on Pip, who leans heavily on Gideon, and then on you, on your crutch and the crude shape of your bandaged leg beneath your trousers. "Indeed," he says softly. "Come with me, all of you. My infirmary is not far." He leads you through the winding streets, away from the chaos of the port. You walk past shops with painted signs and houses with clean glass windows. The world feels unreal, too clean, too ordered. You are acutely aware of your own filth, your stench, the scars that mark you as something other. Dr. Vance leads you to a large, handsome brick house with a polished brass sign that reads, "Drive Lias Vance, Physician." The inside is cool and smells of beeswax and dried herbs. He shows you into a long, clean room at the back of the house, lined with simple but comfortable-looking cots. "You will be safe here," he says. "There is food, water, and clean clothes. First, let me see to the wounded." Quote, he spends the next hour with you and Pip. His touch is professional and gentle. He cleans and redresses your leg with a skill that feels like a miracle. murmuring about clean healing and the good fortune that gangrene hadn't set in. He gives Pip a sweet herbal tonic that eases the boy's lingering pain and sets him on a path to a deep, healing sleep. Later, after you have all washed in hot water and changed into clean borrowed clothes, a quiet but firm woman brings you a meal of thick stew and fresh bread. You eat in silence, the simple act of using a spoon and sitting at a table in alien luxury. The reality of your salvation is so immense, it is paralyzing. That night, you lie on a soft cot with a real pillow under your head. The other survivors are asleep, their faces peaceful for the first time in memory. You are safe. You are clean. You are fed. The horrors of the past weeks feel like a fever dream, but the ache in your leg is real. The scar is real. It is your anchor to the truth of what you endured. The next morning, Dr. Vance speaks with you all. He offers Gideon and the other men a small amount of money and a letter of reference to the harbor master, enough for them to find passage on a ship or work on the docks. They accept with gruff, heartfelt thanks. Gideon clasps your shoulder before he leaves. "You were right, Flynn," he says quietly. "On the boat, we weren't them." He turns and walks away, towards a future you will not share. Then, the doctor turns to you, Locke, Anya, and the sleeping Pip. "You three are not yet fit for heavy labor," he says, his eyes on you and your cousin. "And the boy will need months of care. I am a widower, and this house is too large for one man. I have need of help. A strong man to help with the grounds and heavy lifting," he nods to Locke. "A woman with a deft hand for mending and housekeeping." His gaze falls on Anya, who simply watches him, her face unreadable. "And," he looks at you, his eyes full of understanding, "I have need of an assistant. Someone to help me in the infirmary. Someone who knows what it is to tend to the sick. Someone who has a healer's touch." The offer hangs in the quiet room. It is not just charity. It is a purpose. A new beginning, handed to you on a silver platter of grace. Locke looks at you, his eyes asking the question. Anya tilts her head, a flicker of calculation in her gaze. A safe harbor is the most valuable currency of all. You look at Pip, sleeping soundly, and then at your own hands. They are calloused and scarred, but they are steady. They are the hands that bound wounds on a sinking ship, that offered comfort in the heart of chaos. You meet Dr. Vance's gaze. The arrogant girl who signed on as a jailer would have scoffed at such a life, at its quiet servitude, but you are not her. You have been scoured clean by the sea, reforged in the hurricane. You know now that adventure is not found in plunder and battle, but in the quiet, steady work of mending what is broken. "Yes," you say, your voice clear and certain, "we accept." A small, genuine smile touches Drive. Vance's lips. He nods, and leaves you to your new life. You walk over to the window and look out, not at an endless, threatening ocean, but at a garden where green things are growing. You are no longer adrift. You have made landfall, and for the first time you feel the solid, unshakable certainty that you are finally, truly home. The weeks that follow are a study in quietude, each day a gentle brushstroke painting over the harsh, jagged lines of your past. Life in Dr. Vance's house is governed by the sun and the needs of others, a rhythm as predictable and comforting as a steady pulse. You wake not to the roar of a boatswain or the shriek of a storm, but to the soft morning light filtering through a clean glass window and the distant sounds of Charleston coming to life. Your world becomes the infirmary. It is a long, airy room that smells of dried lavender, carbolic soap, and beeswax, a scent so clean it feels like a physical barrier against the memory of scurvy and rot. Dr. Vance is a patient teacher. He shows you how to properly clean and bind a wound, how to grind herbs for poultices, how to recognize the signs of a fever before it takes hold. "The first step to healing, Ciara," he tells you one afternoon, his voice gentle as he guides your hand in wrapping a fisherman's sprained wrist, "is to see the person, not just the ailment." The words land with the force of a revelation. On the sea serpent, men were their wounds, their diseases, their utility. Here, they are fathers, sons, and husbands, with stories that extend beyond their pain. You learn their names, you listen to their worries, and with each small act of care, a piece of your own brokenness knits itself back together. Locke finds his own peace in labor. He sheds the mantle of the impatient lieutenant and embraces the simple toil of a groundskeeper. You watch him from the infirmary window, his back strong and steady as he mends a fence or turns the soil in the doctor's garden. The furious energy that drove him on the ship is now channeled into creation, into nurturing life from the earth. Sometimes he brings you a perfectly formed rose or a handful of sweet berries, a silent offering that speaks more than words ever could. The fear has left his eyes, replaced by a deep, settled calm. Anya, true to her nature, creates her own silent domain within the house. She moves with an economy of motion that is no longer laziness but profound efficiency. The linens are always clean, the floors are always swept, and a mending basket is never empty. She presides over the household with the quiet authority of a ship's quartermaster, ensuring all runs smoothly. She rarely speaks, but one evening, as you limp back from the infirmary, exhausted, you find a cup of hot, sweet tea waiting for you on the hall table. You look up and see Anya at the far end of the hall, watching. She gives a single, small nod before disappearing into the kitchen. It is an acknowledgement, a recognition of your shared survival, and your new, intertwined lives. Pip is the heart of your healing. As his leg mends, his spirit returns. His laughter, once a foreign sound, begins to echo in the halls. You teach him his letters, using Dr. Vance's medical texts as primers, and he reads to you from a book of fables, his young voice filling the quiet afternoons. He follows Locke in the garden like a shadow, and even coaxes a rare, fleeting smile from Anya with a clumsily made daisy chain. He is a living testament to the fact that even the most grievous wounds can heal, that life can and will flourish again after the storm. Yet the past is never truly gone. It lives in the phantom ache in your leg on a damp day. It rises with the scent of the tide from the harbor, a smell that can still make your stomach clench. One night, a sudden thunderstorm rolls in, the crack of thunder like a cannonade, the rain lashing against the windows. You are instantly back on the deck of the foundering sea serpent, the wind screaming, the deck pitching beneath you. Your breath comes in ragged gasps, and the walls of the small room seem to press in on you. You curl into a ball on your cot, trembling until you feel a hand on your shoulder. It's Locke, his face etched with concern. He doesn't speak, just sits with you in the dark, a solid, calming presence, until the storm passes and the frantic pounding of your heart subsides. You find peace in the garden. You spend your free hours there, your hands in the cool, dark earth, weeding, planting, and watching things grow. You learn the names of the flowers and herbs, their properties, their seasons. Here there is no chaos, only the slow, inexorable cycle of life, death, and rebirth. It is here that you confront the scar. You sit on a stone bench, your trouser leg rolled up, and truly look at the ruined landscape of your thigh. The puckered, silvered tissue is a permanent map of your journey. It is a mark of foolishness, of terror, of unimaginable pain. But it is also a mark of survival. It is the price you paid for the woman you have become. You trace the jagged edges not with shame, but with a sense of finality. This scar does not define you, but it is part of you. It is the anchor that moors you to your past, reminding you of the depths you escaped and the value of the solid ground beneath your feet. You have found a home, not in a place, but in a purpose. The arrogant girl who chased a violent adventure is a ghost, a whisper from another life. You have learned that true strength is not in the wielding of a cutlass, but in the steady hand that offers comfort. True wealth is not in a chest of gold, but in the quiet gratitude of a soul you have helped to heal. The sea took nearly everything from you, but in the wreckage, it gave you back yourself. The future is an uncharted sea, but for the first time you are not afraid. You have a compass now, forged in fire and tempered in grace, and it points not toward adventure, but toward the steady, quiet, and profound work of living. Your days settle into a gentle, predictable current, a stark contrast to the violent, storm-tossed seas of your memory. The infirmary is your harbor, each healed wound a small act of defiance against the chaos you once knew. You learn the weight and balance of Dr. Vance's instruments, the precise scent of his salves. The work is demanding, but it is a clean, honest exhaustion, one that leads to deep sleep and a quiet sense of purpose. One bright, clear morning, as you are grinding herbs with a stone pestle, Dr. Vance enters the room, his black leather bag in hand. "Ciara," he says, his tone thoughtful, "I have several calls to make in town today, some near the wharves. I believe it would be good for you to accompany me. There is more to healing than mending flesh. Sometimes one must understand the shape of the world that inflicts the wounds. You hesitate for a moment, the rhythmic grinding stopping. The thought of the docks, with their cacophony and the raw smell of the sea, sends a faint tremor through you. But you look at your own steady hands, at the clean order of the room, and nod. Yes, doctor. I'm ready. Your first visit is to a shipping office near the harbor, a handsome building of brick and glass. The man inside, a merchant named Mr. Croft, is pale and agitated, his hands fluttering like trapped birds. He speaks not of a physical ailment, but a commercial one. It's happening again, doctor, he says, pacing his finely appointed office. Another ship lost, the Starlight, vanished off the coast of Hispaniola. Pirates, it must be. Insurance rates will skyrocket. The price of sugar and molasses will be ruinous. We can't absorb these losses forever. Men are afraid to sign on for voyages. This lawlessness is a cancer on our trade. You stand quietly in the corner, listening, and the man's words create a vivid, terrible picture in your mind. You see the deck of the Sea Serpent after the taking of La Fortuna. You see the pirates tearing open chests, the shimmering silks and precious spices spilling onto the blood-slicked wood. You see Anya slipping a ring from a dead man's finger. That was Mr. Croft's sugar. That was another man's silk. The adventure, the prize was simply this: terror and ruin, delivered to a man you'd never met, in a city you'd never seen. The gold Bartholomew went to his grave for was not just metal, it was the lifeblood of men like this, and its theft was a wound that bled through the entire economy, felt by every family that had to pay more for their bread and sugar. Your next call takes you to a different world entirely, a crowded, foul-smelling lane behind a row of taverns. Dr. Vance leads you into a dim, noisy public house to see the proprietor, a man suffering from gout. While the doctor tends to his patient in a back room, you wait by the bar, an unwilling observer of the tavern's patrons. They are sailors, dockhands, and drifters, their faces hard, their laughter loud and brittle. A fight breaks out over a card game, a flash of knives and snarled curses that is brutally and efficiently ended not by reason, but by two larger men who beat the combatants into submission. There is no shock, no outcry. The violence is accepted as a normal transaction, the currency of disagreement. A grizzled man with a mangled hand and a permanent sneer notices you watching. See that? He rasps, spitting a stream of tobacco juice near your feet. That's the way of it. The pirate's way, even on dry land. A man takes what he wants. A strong hand is the only law that matters. He squints at you, then at Locke, who has accompanied you for protection. You two have the look. Seeing things. The world ain't run by fancy men in offices like that Croft fella. It's run by men willing to do what needs doing. Quote, the man's words are like a physical blow. This is the enduring legacy of the life you fled. It isn't just in lost cargo. It has seeped into the very soul of the community. The casual brutality of the Sea Serpent, the belief that might makes right, the contempt for law, it hasn't been washed away. It has come ashore. It has taken root here, in the hearts of men who have never flown a black flag but have learned its bitter lessons. The violence has become a part of the culture, a sickness in the blood of the port, leaving a society where trust is a fool's game and a knife is the quickest way to end an argument. Your final visit of the day is to the town magistrate, a friend of the doctor's. You sit in a quiet, book-lined study as the two men talk. The Crown is sending another warship, the magistrate, Mr. Davies says, his face grim. More patrols? Stricter enforcement? We've had to pass new ordinances, public hangings to be made an example of. It's a brutal business, Elias, but the people cry out for order. The terror these pirates inflict, it forces our hand. We must become harder, more severe. The cost of maintaining law is becoming as steep as the cost of the lawlessness itself. Quote, you listen, and you finally understand the full, terrible circle. The pirates, in their quest for a lawless freedom, had created a world that demanded the opposite. Their rebellion didn't birth liberty. It birthed fear. And that fear gave governments the justification to tighten their grip, to build bigger navies, to enact harsher punishments, to erode the very freedoms the pirates claimed to be fighting for. Blackheart's reign of terror didn't just sink ships. It irrevocably altered the course of governance in the colonies, forging a society where order was prized above all else. enforced by the very authority the pirates had sought to escape. Walking back to Dr. Vance's house as the sun sets, the city of Charleston looks different to you. It is no longer just a safe harbor. It is a complex, wounded organism, bearing the deep internal scars of the pirate age. You see the economic fractures, the social decay, the hardening of political will. You realize that your story, the shipwreck, the shark, the scurvy, was not unique. It was just one small, violent ripple in a vast, destructive tide that had reshaped the entire Caribbean and the shores of the Americas. The age of piracy wasn't just a collection of swashbuckling tales. It was a historical force, as powerful and transformative as any war or revolution, leaving behind a legacy of violence, distrust, and a desperate hunger for order that would define these societies for generations to come. Your own scars suddenly feel less personal, part of a larger, collective wound you're only now beginning to comprehend. The revelations of the day settle within you not like stones, but like silt in a river, clouding the water before slowly clarifying your view of the riverbed. Back in the sanctuary of Dr. Vance's garden, you kneel and press your fingers into the cool, damp earth. The scent is rich and alive, a stark contrast to the miasma of greed, fear, and decay you had breathed in the city's underbelly. You look at your hands, clean and stained with soil. These same hands once gripped a cutlass, its purpose only to tear and to take. They held a dying man's hand as scurvy stole his life. They punched futilely at the unyielding flank of a shark. Now they grind herbs, they bind wounds, they plant seeds. You had once believed ambition was a straight, shining line, a ladder to be climbed towards glory and wealth. You see its true shape now. It was Bartholomew on his knees, his ambition shrinking him until he was nothing more than a desperate man scrabbling for trinkets in the face of oblivion. It was the furious, empty violence in the tavern, ambition curdled into a snarling need to dominate the man next to you. It was Mr. Croft's trembling hands, the casualty of another man's ambition 1,000 miles away. That path led only to ruin, a hunger that devoured everything, including the one who was hungry. You had mistaken brutality for strength and arrogance for worth. The real strength you now understand was in Dr. Forborse Vance's patient hands, in Silas the cook offering a piece of fruit, in the quiet dignity of the magistrate wrestling with the grim necessities of order. It was in the choice to build rather than break, to soothe rather than savage. The compassion you'd once seen as a weakness was the only thing of true value, the only force capable of mending the wounds inflicted by a world full of men like Blackheart Bartholomew. That evening, the 5 of you who remain from the Sea Serpent gather in the kitchen for a simple meal of soup and bread. The room is warm, lit by the gentle glow of a single candle. Pip, his color returned, meticulously arranges his bread crusts into a small fort on his plate. Locke sits beside him, watching with a small, easy smile, the deep lines of impatience gone from around his eyes. He catches your gaze and nods toward Pip. He's decided he's going to be a master builder, he says, his voice low and warm. Not a sailor. A fine choice, you reply, and the simple exchange is freighted with a shared, unspoken understanding. Anya sits across from you, her movements as deliberate as ever. She has been mending one of Pip's new shirts, and she now folds it with practiced precision, her small, perfect stitches nearly invisible. She pushes the folded shirt across the table toward the boy. It's not a gift given with warmth, but a task completed with her unique, dispassionate competence. Yet it is an act of care. You remember her on the longboat, her keen eyes spotting the rain clouds, her quiet observation saving you all. You realize that her impenetrable self-interest, when bound to the fate of others, had transformed into a form of selfless contribution. She was a part of this strange, shipwrecked family, whether she would ever admit it or not. Looking at them, Locke, the cousin you'd nearly lost to duty and despair, Anya, the antagonist who had become a reluctant pillar of your new world, Pip, the boy who represented a future you had helped to save, a profound sense of peace settles over you. The boisterous, drunken camaraderie of the pirate ship had been a counterfeit thing, a bond forged in shared danger that dissolved at the first sign of real trouble. This was different. This quiet connection, built in the silence of an open boat and nurtured in the safety of this house, was real. It was a lifeline woven from threads of mutual need, shared trauma, and the simple, unspoken choice to look after one another. This human connection was the true treasure, the only prize worth having, And you had found it not in a Spanish treasure chest, but here, in a quiet kitchen, at the end of the world. Later, you stand by your window looking out into the moonlit garden. You are no longer a jailer, no longer a pirate, no longer a victim. You are a healer. The title feels as solid and real as the floor beneath your feet. Redemption, you understand now, is not a grand gesture or a single act of atonement. It is a daily practice. It is the life you now lead. Every wound you dress is a counterpoint to the violence you witnessed. Every life you soothe is a quiet rebellion against the chaos that once consumed you. You have left the darkness of the pirate world behind, not by outrunning it, but by choosing to build a life that radiates a small but steady light against it. You touch the scar on your leg through the thin fabric of your nightdress. It no longer feels like a brand of terror. It is a reminder of the price of knowledge, the cost of your own transformation. The sea had tried to claim you, to drown you in its cold, indifferent depths. But it had failed. It had taken everything you thought you were, and, in the process, had shown you who you could become. The arrogant girl was gone, her story ended. A new one, written in empathy and purpose, was just beginning. You are scarred, you are changed, but you are finally, irrevocably free. Years pass, not in a blur of survival, but as a slow, deliberate turning of seasons. The green of Charleston's summer deepens into the gold and rust of autumn, then softens into the pale gray of winter, before bursting forth again in the defiant green of spring. Your life finds this same rhythm. The infirmary is your world, a place of quiet purpose. The scar on your leg, once a source of searing pain and terror, becomes a simple fact of your body, an ache that forecasts the rain, a physical reminder of a life that feels as distant as a half-remembered dream. You learn to walk without the crutch, though a slight limp will always be your companion. It becomes a part of you, like the newfound patience in your voice, or the way you can now look at a man's suffering with a calm, appraising eye, your mind already sorting through remedies instead of recoiling in fear. The sea, once an omnipresent threat, recedes. It is still there, a constant murmur at the edge of the city's consciousness, its salty breath carried on the wind, but it no longer has teeth. It is simply a feature of the landscape, like the old oak in the garden, or the cobblestones in the street. One afternoon, when the sun is warm and the sky is a brilliant, cloudless blue, you walk to the harbor alone. You do it not on an errand for the doctor, but for yourself. You stand on the edge of a busy wharf, watching a merchantman unload its cargo. Bales of cotton and heavy barrels of rum are swung ashore by a crane, the work punctuated by the shouts of the foreman and the laughter of the sailors. They are lean, hard men, their faces weathered by sun and sea, but their eyes are clear. They work with an easy camaraderie, and when their shift is done, they head not for a brawl, but towards the taverns for a well-earned meal and ale. You breathe in the familiar scent of tarred rope, salt, and brackish water, and for the first time it does not carry the ghost of blood or decay. It is simply the smell of commerce, of lives being lived. Locke finds you there, his hands clean, but his knuckles still calloused from his work in the garden. He stands beside you, following your gaze out towards the open water. "It looks different from here, doesn't it?" he says quietly. "It's just water," you reply, the words feeling true for the first time. "Aye, it is." He is silent for a moment. Dr. Vance has offered me a partnership in a small shipping concern he's invested in, managing the warehouses, keeping the books. He looks at you, a hint of a question in his eyes. "It's a long way from being a lieutenant." "It's a long way from being a prisoner, too," you say, giving him a small smile. "You'll be good at it. You always knew how to keep things in order." The compliment lands gently. He nods, accepting it. "And you, Kiki? The doctor says you have a better diagnostic eye than any surgeon's mate he's ever known." Quote, "You think of the infirmary, of the gratitude in a patient's eyes, of the simple, profound satisfaction of easing pain. I'm where I'm supposed to be," you say, and the certainty of it is as solid as the dock beneath your feet. You have all found your moorings. Pip, now a lanky adolescent, is apprenticed to a master carpenter, his hands, once frail, now skilled at shaping wood into things of beauty and use. Anya, in a move that surprised everyone but herself, used her meticulously saved wages to purchase a small share in a textile import business. Her quiet, shrewd nature, once used solely for self-preservation, has proven formidable in the world of trade. You see her sometimes in the market, assessing bolts of silk with an expert's eye. A woman who has found her own form of power in a world far from the pirate's code. That evening, as the sun bleeds into the horizon, casting the harbor in hues of rose and gold, you feel a deep and abiding peace. You walk home, your limp a steady, familiar rhythm on the cobblestones. The city is settling down for the night. The warm glow of candles and lamps begins to appear in windows. You pass by homes filled with the sounds of family, of lives far removed from the desperate brutality you once knew. In your own quiet home, you find Pip reading by the fire, Locke studying a ledger, and the scent of Anya's simple, savory cooking drifting from the kitchen. This is your crew now. This is your prize. Later, in the quiet of your room, you stand before a small mirror. The woman who looks back at you is a stranger to the arrogant girl who boarded the sea serpent. Her eyes hold a wisdom that was bought at a terrible price. Her face has lines of care and concentration that were not there before. You touch the scar through your nightdress, not with sorrow, but with a kind of detached gratitude. It is the proof that you endured. It is the story of your transformation, written on your own skin. The past is not a ghost that haunts you, but a foundation, dark and deep, upon which you have built a life of light and purpose. You open the window, letting in the cool night air. From the distance comes the faint, rhythmic wash of the waves on the shore, a sound so constant it merges with the beat of your own heart. It is not the roar of the storm or the whisper of a circling predator. It is a lullaby. The sound of the world breathing. You lie down in your bed, pulling the clean, soft quilt up to your chin and close your eyes. There are no nightmares of sharks or sinking ships. There is only the gentle rocking of a world at peace, the soft whispers of the sea guiding you into a deep and dreamless sleep.